on my side. Hey, pal.
You know what we don't talk about enough? Body-hopping demons who sing Rolling Stone songs. But hey, that's what I'm here for. Today we're diving into Fallen, the 1998 supernatural thriller, where Denzel Washington plays a cop in way over his head, and not because of paperwork. Written by Nicholas Kazan and directed by Gregory Hoblit, who also gave us Primal Fear and Frequency, Fallen hit theaters in January of '98, right when audiences were still busy seeing Titanic for the fourth time. Not great timing for a grim supernatural mystery with zero icebergs and not a single romantic flute solo. Even with the stacked cast, Denzel Washington, John Goodman, Donald Sutherland, James Gandolfini, and Annabeth Davids, the movie still flopped hard. But why? Well, the trailers made it look like a typical detective movie, and people weren't ready for the slow burn demonic possession thriller they actually got. Plus, it's tough to build word of mouth when the villain keeps changing faces. But here's the twist. Fallen didn't stay buried. Over the years, it's built a cult following, especially among horror fans and thriller nerds who love a good philosophical nightmare. It's like if Seven and The Exorcist had a weird baby who quoted scripture and really loved the Rolling Stones. The film stars Denzel Washington as Detective John Hobbs, a divorced man who lives with his brother Art and helps raise his nephew Sam. This quiet, family-first side of Hobbs is one of my favorite things about the character. It paints him as genuinely good-hearted, grounded, and selfless, which puts him in direct contrast with the evil he's about to face. And in a story where the villain can wear any face, that kind of integrity really matters. The film is also unique in that it technically opens with the ending. A clearly troubled Hobbs narrates the story of the time he almost died. We then jump back in time as Hobbs is called in to see convicted serial killer Edgar Reese, played by Elias Koteas, aka the best Casey Jones ever put to film.
Now, a little Primatine might just help clear that up there.
Hobbs was the detective who put Reese away, and now Reese has requested to see him one last time before his execution. But why? Well, just to play some mind games, sing a creepy Rolling Stone song, and mutter something in a language that no one can understand. It's unsettling, but Hobbs has no idea that it's only the beginning. Speaking of that creepy Rolling Stone song, Time Is On My Side, it isn't just Reese's weird execution day jam. The song plays a significant role throughout the film, popping up again and again like a musical calling card for the devil. It's catchy, sure, but the more you hear it, the more it starts to feel like a threat, and by the end, you'll understand just how right the lyrics really are, in the most sinister way possible, of course.
Time is on my side. Yes, it is.
As Reese walks to his execution, during the execution itself, and even after he's dead, it's pretty clear this demon is real. The movie doesn't really play coy about it. You see enough strange behavior, creepy singing, and post-mortem weirdness to know something supernatural is going on. What's interesting though is that behind the scenes, the writer, director, and producers debated whether or not to show the demon's presence so directly. There was talk about leaving it more ambiguous, letting the audience wonder if maybe it was all just psychological, a string of coincidences, or Hobbs losing grip with his sanity. In the end, they did go with the demonic vision, and while it works, I do wonder if maybe holding back a little might have made things even creepier. Sometimes what you don't show is more unsettling than what you do. One of the guards is then taken over by whatever this thing is, and we get this great sequence where it jumps from person to person, like it's playing supernatural tag. Eventually it lands on character actor Robert Joy, who, let's be honest, already kinda looks like he knows where the bodies are buried. I'm not sure why this thing decided to stick with him out of everyone it possessed. You'd think if it were trying to keep a low profile, maybe pick someone who doesn't naturally give off suspicious loner and aisle 6 energy, but maybe subtlety just wasn't the vibe it was looking for. After the execution, Hobbs kicks back with his partner Jonesy, played by John Goodman, and Lou, played by James Gandolfini, who's been with the precinct all of 5 months and already suspicious of everyone. Lou grills Hobbs on whether he's the kind of cop who takes bribes or gets involved in any of the usual shady stuff cops get accused of. It's pretty clear that Lou's the one with the questionable morals here, but this scene is great at driving home just how solid Hobbs really is. No corruption, no funny business, just a good guy trying to do his job right. And to just double down on just how good Hobbs is, there's a quiet little scene with him and his brother Art as they get Sam ready for school. Nothing huge happens plot-wise, but it's a simple, sweet character moment that really sells the family dynamic. It reminds you Hobbs isn't just a cop, he's a brother and an uncle who shows up for the people he loves.
I love you too, Art. But don't make the boy any more peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
In stark contrast of that, we have demon-possessed Robert Joy, starting his morning routine like any normal guy, pouring a bowl of cereal, then brushing his teeth. Only difference, behind him there's a body in the bathtub like it's part of the decor. Just your typical breakfast and bath combo, I guess. Even though Hobbs put Reese away for good, someone or something is still watching him. Strange calls coming at odd hours of the night, just like the ones Reese used to make before he got caught. Hobbs and Jonesy are called to the scene of the murdered man in the tub. Jonesy spots some strange writing scrawled on the wall, Lyons and Spakowski, with question marks in between.
Why is there a space between Lyons and Spakowski? What?
At the time, it seemed like meaningless gibberish, but now, staring at those words at a crime scene, Hobbs starts to wonder, is there a copycat out there? Or maybe Reese had an accomplice he never knew about. The idea that something supernatural might be involved hasn't even crossed his mind yet, probably because he's a cop and not a Ghostbuster.
I have seen shit that'll turn you white.
Honestly, the copycat theory isn't too far-fetched. There was a documentary crew filming Reese during his final moments with Hobbs, and who knows how many people saw that and thought, hey, I could do that, because nothing says inspiration like watching a serial killer get one last moment in the spotlight. An interesting break comes when Lou mentions he once worked with a Spakowski, which leads Hobbs to a plaque listing the names Lyons and Spakowski, with a name suspiciously missing right between them. Looks like someone's been playing a little game of connect the dots, and Hobbs is just starting to realize this puzzle might be way bigger than he thought. Hobbs does some digging and uncovers the missing name Robert Milano, a cop who supposedly died from a self-inflicted gunshot at a cabin in the woods. But when Hobbs brings this up to his lieutenant, things get very weird. Like, very, very weird. It's clear he doesn't want Hobbs poking around this one. Makes you wonder, what's he hiding? And is it something that could get Hobbs killed or just really fired? Not willing to back off just because things might get a little shady, he keeps digging and eventually tracks down Robert Milano's daughter Greta, played by the always elegant, always slightly haunted looking Embeth Davidtz.
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
And it turns out Greta knows a thing or two about the supernatural. Hobbs tells Greta he got her father's name from Reese, though he kinda dances around the details. But when he mentions the song and that Reese grabbed his hand during their last encounter, Greta's face goes cold real fast. Clearly she's heard that kind of thing before and she does not like where it's headed. She makes one thing crystal clear. What she's about to tell him stays off the record. No reports, no partners, no leaks. Then she drops the story. Her father, Robert Milano, once caught a serial killer, but after the guy was supposedly dealt with, a series of copycat killings started popping up. Creepy enough, but the evidence started pointing back at her dad. Eventually, he isolated himself in a cabin in the woods and took his own life. Afterward, the people in charge, the mayor, the police chiefs, the usual cover-up suspects, swept it all under the rug, and now, somehow, it's all starting again. Only this time, Hobbs is in the middle of it. So yeah, not exactly a hey, let's grab a coffee and catch up kind of meeting between these two. Our demonically possessed Robert is back, but not for long. He passes the evil along to some unsuspecting new host, and is promptly killed off in his apartment just moments later. At this point, Hobbs is getting more suspicious calls than a sweet old lady being told her car warranty is about to expire. And speaking of strange calls, the next day at work, Hobbs gets an anonymous tip. Someone's calling in to report the murder of our recently deceased, formerly possessed pal Robert. Because nothing says you're being watched by a supernatural entity like getting a murder report before the body's even cold and right to your desk. Honestly, at this point, Hobbs should just forward all his calls to Rod Serling. The crime scene with Robert is an eerie deja vu. The same syringe, the same bathtub, the whole grim setup. And of course, there's a fresh riddle scribbled on the wall, like the demons leaving us cryptic little notes. This sends Hobbs down a serious rabbit hole, digging into Milano's mysterious self-murder, and eventually tracking down the very cabin where the man died. Meanwhile, Hobbs' lieutenant is starting to get concerned about his mental state. This isn't the first time he's watched someone spiral down this kind of dark path. Milano went the same way, and now Hobbs might be headed for a similar cliff. So Hobbs travels out to a cabin in the woods, middle of nowhere naturally, and finds some old books on demons, because nothing screams welcome to Spook Central like dusty old occult tomes lying around. Now here's a fun bit. That sudden jump scare in the basement, that wasn't in the script or original cut at all. During test screenings, this scene was pretty quiet. Hobbs just finds the book and leaves. But at one screening, someone got up to hit the bathroom, and when the door slammed behind them, the whole audience jumped. Warner Brothers executives loved the reaction so much, they decided to shoot and add an actual jump scare to the scene to up the tension. So that sudden crash, pure audience-inspired genius. It's a cheap little scare, sure, but hell if it's not effective. Inside one of the dusty demon books, Hobbs finds an old photo of the cabin's basement. The wall's covered in weird scratches, and on the back of the photo, someone's written one simple word: look. Curious, Hobbs grabs some paint thinner and starts cleaning the wall, and boom, hidden beneath the grime is the word Azazel. Hobbs tracks down Greta and starts grilling her about her father's fascination with demons, especially the ones that apparently move by touch. She's pretty evasive though, brushing him off like he's about to sign her up for some demon fan club that no one wants to join. Her message? Trust me, you don't want to get involved with this. But spoilers, that's exactly what he's gonna do. Although it's not so much that he wants to get involved, it's sort of being thrust upon him. One interesting detail that sets this demon apart, it doesn't just hop between humans. At one point it straight up possesses a cat. That's right, the demon can be anyone or anything. So yeah, cats don't just carry Toxoplasma gondii anymore, which is a depression-causing parasite, just so you know. Now they're apparently carrying demons too, as if the litter box wasn't scary enough. This moment sets up what I think is the best scene in the entire movie. The demon starts jumping from cop to cop, playing an invisible game of tag, until it lands on Lou, who suddenly starts singing that same creepy Rolling Stones tune. It's a chilling moment, and it confirms everything Hobbs has feared. Azazel is real, and worse, he can be anyone at any moment. It turns the whole movie into a supernatural cat and mouse game, with Hobbs trying to stay one step ahead of a demon who can body hop like it's rush hour at Grand Central. And Lou, well, let's just say that his karaoke skills aren't exactly helping.
Time is on my side.
Back at the beginning when Reese is awaiting execution, he does this strange thing with the ring finger on his left hand, kind of twitchy and unnatural. Turns out it wasn't just a character quirk. Director Gregory Hoblit was so impressed with Koteas' physicality in that role that he made it a rule. Everyone who gets possessed by the demon has to move in a similar way. So when familiar faces like Robert Joy or James Gandolfini get taken over, they subtly mimic that same off-kilter finger twitch. It's a smart little breadcrumb trail for viewers, and a great excuse if you ever need to explain away awkward hand gestures. No, I'm not nervous, I'm just possessed by a demon. Hobbs meets with Greta again, and this time she drops some serious lore. According to her, Azazel is actually a fallen angel cast out by God, and is now getting revenge by jumping from body to body, leaving a trail of murders behind. She also mentions that some angels were left on Earth to stop him, and Hobbs just might be one of them. Now, normally if someone tells you you're a divine secret weapon sent to stop a body-hopping demon, you'd probably back away slowly and maybe report them to HR. But after everything Hobbs has seen, he doesn't laugh it off, he actually starts considering it. Because when your week includes creepy phone calls, cryptic riddles, and a demon-possessed cat, maybe I'm an angel doesn't even crack the top 5 weirdest things on your mind. Greta is then followed by the demon, who seems to sense something oddly familiar about her. It doesn't realize she's the daughter of Robert Milano, but it definitely gets that spooky deja vu vibe. Also, is nobody around noticing this clearly terrified woman being cornered by a man who's radiating call the cops energy? I know people like to mind their business, but this is pushing it. Apparently we're in the part of town where someone could be possessed and mugged and it'd still get a shrug. This scene isn't quite as strong as the earlier body hopping sequence with Hobbs, but it's still pretty solid. Interestingly, the original trailer for the film includes a shot of Greta being followed into a store where the demon tries to stab her. While the director and producer thought the scene worked in terms of tension, they ultimately cut it because, let's be honest, a stabbing spree isn't really Azazel's vibe. Possession is the name of his game, and leave the knives to Michael Myers. After Greta's encounter with the demon, Hobbs decides it's best if they don't see each other for a while for her safety, and you start to get the feeling, or at least I do, that there might be something more between them. Maybe not full-on romantic tension, but there's definitely a connection. It's subtle, but Hobbs seems to care about her a little more than he would a typical witness or source. It's the kind of are we trauma bonding, or is this something real vibe that would definitely confuse a therapist. Things take a much darker turn when the demon stops playing games and starts targeting Hobbs' own family. It seemingly possesses his young nephew Sam, who lashes out and attacks his own father. That might be disturbing enough, but then the demon jumps into one of Sam's little friends, which leads to Hobbs doing the totally rational thing of chasing a child through the streets like a madman. Shockingly, this does not go over well with the general public. The demon jumps again, this time into a grown man who promptly pulls out a gun and fires at Hobbs in broad daylight. Hobbs is forced to kill the man, but the demon just hops into another body. The filmmakers even nicknamed this new host the Stalker. It's probably all part of the demon's long game. For whatever reason, it's always been drawn to Hobbs. Back when it was in Reese, it tried to transfer into him. But something about Hobbs, his goodness, his moral compass, his refusal to jaywalk somehow rejected it. But now, killing an innocent man might just be enough to tarnish Hobbs' soul, making him a viable host. Greta calls to check in on him and reveals something hopeful. This thing might be killable. Apparently, when it's not inside a host, it can only survive for a short time, unless it finds another body. If it doesn't though, it dies. Or maybe it just floats off to try again during the next full moon, who knows? Demonic fine print is notoriously vague. Things take a darker turn the next morning when Hobbs starts noticing a few unsettling details. An open window, strange writing on the bathroom mirror, and his nephew mentioning that someone tickled his chest while he slept. Yeah, not exactly the kind of thing you want to hear over breakfast. Sadly, I think we all know where this is going. Just like with Robert Milano, the demon has been carefully setting the stage, leaving a trail of evidence that now points squarely at Hobbs. To make matters even worse, the stalker shows up on the news, claiming Hobbs shot first, which of course he didn't, but thanks to Azazel's little trick, the truth is now just another casualty. Azazel is doing everything it can to ruin Hobbs' life and reputation. It's not enough to torment him, it wants to completely unravel him, and now with the walls closing in, Hobbs has no choice but to go on the run. Now, I don't usually do this, but because I think this is a genuinely good movie that I want people to watch, if you don't want the ending of the movie spoiled, then I recommend you turn this off now and go watch that instead. Don't worry, you won't be hurting my feelings, I just want people to check this movie out. One thing that kinda makes me laugh though is how Hobbs has been quietly piecing together these clues. Random letters showing up at crime scenes and around his house, eventually spelling out apocalypse along with a Bible verse. And wouldn't you know it, the moment he puts all this together, there just happens to be a nun on the same train car, so we can go over to her and ask her what it means. I mean, thank God for public transit, right? Hobbs brings Sam to Greta's place at this point. She's really the only person he can trust. I mean, sure, he has Jonesy, but considering he's a cop, Hobbs can't exactly confide in him about the whole demon hopping from body to body situation, now can he? So he decides to leave Sam with Greta for now, hoping he can finally put an end to this Azazel nightmare. I mean, if anyone's going to babysit your nephew during an apocalypse, it might as well be the woman who owns a library's worth of demon books. Hobbs makes his way back to that isolated cabin in the woods where this whole mess started and where he plans to end it. He waits there in silence, armed with everything he's learned, ready to face whatever steps out of the trees. And when the demon finally arrives, it's his lieutenant.
Do what he says, Hobbs.
Right, because just when you think things couldn't get any worse, Jonesy shows up too. Now Hobbs is stuck in the middle of nowhere with both his boss and his partner, and one of them is Azazel, or maybe both. Who knows, maybe it's a demonic tag team. It turns out Jonesy is Azazel because of course he is. Your lovable beer-drinking partner turning out to be a body-swapping demon is kind of the ultimate betrayal. It's like finding out your dog has been secretly filing your taxes wrong on purpose. Azazel and Jonesy waste no time and shoots the lieutenant, leaving Hobbs as the last man standing and also the prime suspect in yet another murder. Hobbs manages to outplay Azazel in a move that's equal parts heroic and absolutely bleak. He shoots Jonesy knowing full well that this means the demon is about to go airborne, and while Azazel can't possess Hobbs through touch, once it's free floating, it's a whole different story, like an evil Wi-Fi signal looking for the nearest open connection. No obstacles, no buffer, it should be game over, but Hobbs came prepared. He laced his own cigarettes with the same poison that killed his brother, because apparently if you're gonna die in a remote cabin, you might as well do it with the most hardcore anti-smoking ad ever. The plan is simple. Azazel takes over Hobbs, Hobbs dies shortly after, and the demon is left without a body to inhabit. Going back to when Hobbs dropped his nephew off at Greta's, there's this quiet emotional beat where it's clear he knows he's not coming back, and deep down, so does she. There's a small intimate moment where she takes his hand and kisses it, and it kind of confirms what's been simmering between them the whole time. There was a connection there, maybe not a full-blown romance, but definitely something real. Unfortunately, thanks to the whole demonic body-hopping murder spirit situation, any shot at something deeper was doomed from the start. Hobbs knew it, Greta knew it, and in the end, she wasn't just someone he cared about, she was someone he had to protect, because around Hobbs, no one was truly safe. But in one of the biggest cinematic FUs in horror movie history, just as Azazel possessed Hobbs takes his final breath, the demon slips out and into the body of a random gray cat lurking nearby. Hobbs is gone, Azazel isn't. Evil wins, roll credits. And remember that opening voiceover? That wasn't Hobbs, it was Azazel the whole time. There's even a little clue when it says, if I told you the whole story, it would take forever, which makes more sense coming from a fallen angel who's been body hopping for thousands of years. Now this isn't the first time we've seen a demon-possessed cat, so the groundwork was laid, but still, the final twist hits like a sucker punch. And it opens up a whole bunch of questions. If Azazel can jump into a cat, what else can he possess? A raccoon? A squirrel? What's the cutoff? Does it need to have a soul? A high school diploma? Also, if the demon's now in a cat, why does the voiceover still sound like Denzel Washington? I get that Fallen the Meowlog wouldn't have had the same emotional weight, but come on, some muffled purring and subtitles would have at least been honest. But that ending was an absolute gut punch when I first saw it as a kid. I was so used to seeing the good guys win, vanquish the evil, walk off into the sunset, cue the credits. But this was different. Not just in a jump scare or a maybe he survived twist, but in a real definitive way. Hobbs died, Azazel lived. It terrified me. Like, genuinely freaked me out to the point I didn't watch the movie again for years. Jason Voorhees might come back in sequel after sequel, but he still loses each time. Azazel just shrugs, sings a song, and keeps on going. And that song, Time Is On My Side, it wasn't just a creepy little motif, it was the whole damn point. Hobbs was mortal, Azazel wasn't. No matter how clever or good Hobbs was, time wasn't on his side. The demon could have toyed with him for decades if it wanted to, and once Hobbs was gone, on to the next. Evil doesn't stop, evil just finds another body. But behind all that darkness and dread, there's a fascinating little story about how this film came to be, because it wasn't easy. In fact, it started with a guy in a room, alone for months. Writer Nicholas Kazan spent 3 years developing the idea, obsessively trying to figure out how to make the film's beginning connect with its ending in a way that made sense. He basically went full detective himself, minus the demon. Eventually, after months holed up in his room writing, he finished the script and put it on the market. That's when producer Chuck Roven stepped in. The script hit the industry like hot gossip, and by that Friday, Chuck had a copy in his hands. He and his company had been trying to work with Kazan for years, but Kazan had always turned them down. Until now. Chuck made him an offer that he couldn't refuse, and this time, Kazan said yes. But Kazan didn't just write the script. He also helped bring in director Gregory Hoblit. The two were talking one day when Kazan casually mentioned the Fallen script and asked if Greg had read it. Hoblit said no, he'd heard about it floating around Hollywood, bouncing between directors and actors over the years, but figured it was out of his league. Kazan told him the buzz had died down and that now might be the perfect time to give it a read. Greg took the script home over the weekend, and by Monday he was all in. Hoblit, Kazan, and Roven were already working on rewrites and casting. One of the first things Hoblit did was tell them how much he loved the script, followed immediately by faxing them over 60 pages of single-line notes. And keep in mind, that was for a script he liked. You can only imagine the page count if he didn't. And once Denzel Washington signed on as Detective Hobbs, the note-taking didn't stop. Denzel's the kind of actor who always wants to understand every motivation, why a character says something, what he's thinking, what's going on underneath the surface, which meant even more questions, rewrites, and fine-tuning. So yeah, for a movie about a demon effortlessly slipping from body to body, it took years of writing, the right team coming together at the right time, and one very persistent fax machine. Unfortunately, when Fallen hit theaters, it flopped, and the critics weren't kind either. Many took issue with the bleak tone, and the New York Times summed it up by saying, "It has an interesting premise. Unfortunately, it's just a recycling of old materials and not all that thrilling." Ouch. To make matters worse, the film was released just a few weeks after Titanic, which was dominating the box office and left barely any room for smaller, darker films like this one to stay afloat. Would it have done better if Arnold Schwarzenegger had been cast as Hobbs? He was actually considered at one point, but honestly, I don't think he has the acting chops for this kind of material. Plus, he'd go on to star in his own religious thriller the following year, End of Days, which made nearly 10 times what Fallen did. But when you compare the two, this one's the better film. So that's Fallen, a grim little gem that asks what happens when evil isn't just some masked killer in the woods, but something ancient, invisible, and patient. It didn't get the love it deserved back in '98, but over time, it's carved out its own cult following. Just like Azazel, it's still out there, waiting to be discovered. But what do you think about Fallen? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope you're having a great day, and as always, stay spooky.